Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Wealth and Christ Show, a show where we inspire the masses to become financially free while building God's kingdom. On the show today, we have Miss Bola Sol. Miss Bola Sol is a financial coach and the author of the book of How to Save It. In addition, she's a content creator who is very passionate about empowering individuals, particularly women, to take control of their finance and to develop a healthy money mindset. She's a founder of the Refinance Currency, and she basically is a money coach, and she basically inspires people from all different backgrounds on how they can become financially free. So thank you for being here, Miss Bola Sol.
Thank you for having me. Sorry, just wanted to say it's refined currency, but it's cool.
Fine currency. I apologize.
No worries, no worries. I'm
How
really
are you doing today?
good. I'm really happy to be on this podcast. I get
Guts.
oh, sorry.
We all have them.
Sorry, some random ad in the background. I'm good. I'm really happy to be on this podcast. I do get asked to be on podcasts at times, but when you said it was called Wealth in Christ, I love the name and I was like, do you know what? I want to do this. So I'm really, really happy to be here and honored that you asked me. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So just to start the conversation, I want to ask, what inspired you to become a money coach? How did you get started in this field?
Yeah. There's so many things that inspired me. I studied mathematics and finance at uni, and I felt like the conversations and the things that I was learning about money wasn't available to everyone because I started talking to some of my best friend about money, and I could just see in her face that she didn't really understand what I was talking about, and I didn't want that to be the case for her or anyone else. And I, at one point, wanted to become like this big CEO of a big bank or CFO. But between racism and sexism, I was like, man, I don't think this is going to work. And, representation matters, and I wasn't seeing it. And I said, do you know what? I'm going to start my own company and I'm going to start talking about personal finance. And I'm going to start on a basic level because I don't want to be a financial advisor, because in my opinion, that's giving advice to people who already have money. There are people who don't have money who really need to understand how money works and know what to do with it, as opposed to getting caught up doing the wrong things. And they don't need to feel judged by that lack of knowledge. And I want to be the person who gets them there. So I started Refine Currency and I started talking about money 8 years ago.
Wow, that's very impressive. One thing I just stuck out to you just now, which you just mentioned, is the sexism and racism. I want to ask you, how does, I guess we can handle it individually, but how does sexism play a role in the world of finance? If you can dive into that real quick.
Yeah, so funny enough, because I spoke to someone about this today, actually, from America as well. And I said, basically, based on World War II times, men were going to work and women were staying at home. And within the last 100 years, globally, 100 years ago, women could not have their own bank account. Women could not buy a property on their own. They could not have a job. Right? So for us to go from there to being able to do all of these things, it's an exchange of power that the powers that be and generations before us have not fully settled into. Now, as a result of that, finding women in finance used to be quite hard, but as this generation of millennials and even Gen Zs are coming along, we're seeing more people in finance, and it's fantastic to see, but I'm still aware that there's a lot of sexism. You go in, you want to look the part. Sometimes you're going to be hit on. You're going to be hit on with people who have wives and children, but you have to remember why you're there. Or although somehow it's like you may be the one getting the daggers, as if to say you've done anything wrong. And sometimes even as a woman, there's also this factor of, oh, there's only room for one woman to get here, so we all have to be against each other, crabs in a bucket kind of mentality. So that's definitely some of the things I've seen in the corporate world.
That's very interesting. And how would you say racism, plays along as well, in terms of finance from your perspective?
So once again, in my mind, this still goes back to the history of slavery. So this notion now that you are someone who has a very senior position, I noticed that when Black people have a very senior position, there is a lot more weight on them to do what's right and to not mess up and almost be quite clean between all the lines, like don't, don't muddy the waters. So that's definitely what I've seen. And also there's not many of them. And when there is, they really have to blend in to understand the environment they're in, as opposed to being their full selves. But I am hopeful, and I'm seeing that we're getting to a point where, do you know what? We can be ourselves. We can be ourselves, and that's enough.
That's very important. Just me just thinking about it just now, being a woman and just being a woman of color are like the two things that like in this world is like you get attacked for. And I want to ask, what do you think are some solutions, to help, build this wealth gap, build this close on the racism, make it more friendly to all kind of people, specifically women of color.
Oh, women of color. Wow. I don't know if I've ever been asked that question. And it's crazy because I've spoken to a lot of people. Um, what can be done? Give women of color, Black women, to be specific, the same opportunities. And give it to them without feeling like it is a diversity and inclusion merit. Give it to them because they are good enough. Give it to them irrespective of whether or not you're close friends with them. Give it to them because they are good at their jobs and you know they're going to do a good job. That's one. Put excuse me, giving us the right opportunities. Two, I think there just needs to be more communities for us as women of color to thrive and to have conversations together about money. I think that's key. Places that we can come and say, this is what we know, this is what we don't, whether, a woman of color is married or she's single, it doesn't matter. We need to come together and have these conversations. That's definitely key and I think those are the two things, because if we have that community and we can continue to build it worldwide, what happens is we're having deeper conversations. We're talking about life insurance, we're talking about pensions and wills and how we're setting up things for our kids and how we're making income either for ourselves or for ourselves and our families and things like that.
Yes, that's very true. And it kind of remind me of two interviews I did in the past. One where we was talking about, I guess I'll actually input basically how women in general, they always think when it comes to finance, it's like a man should be the one focused on finance. A man should be the one knowing how all the bills are paid off. So I guess my first question is, what would you say to a woman who may have that mindset, feels like it's completely the man's responsibility, 100% the man's responsibility to know everything, and they should just go as go with the flow, basically.
I'd say don't be stupid. That's it's black and white. Like, don't be stupid. Anything can happen. And I'm not talking about things like the worst, because some people think, oh, cheating and he's left me with nothing, or he's gone for a younger woman. You see that a lot in like fictional movies and stuff. But I'm talking about, if he passes away, do you know where the documents are?
Yeah.
Do you know who the power of attorney is? These are things that I'm like, don't just leave it to him all day, every day. I feel like there's a difference. Some women leave their men to it, but they know where everything is and they know what's going on. I have no problem with that because you are aware. I'm talking about people who just refuse to care because it's always being taken care of. Because if for any reason that man can no longer take care of you, it could be health issues, it could be any of these things. Where do you stand? You stand in ignorance, a place you chose to stand for a long time.
That's very true. And I guess to start the conversation, whether it's for single women or married women, how can that conversation start up?
You mean as a single woman?
Yeah, like how can like, as a single woman, in regards for them like when they dating, looking for a significant other, like, what are some type of questions, they can ask, their boyfriend or supposed to be husband to make sure that they have understanding of what kind of mindset he has regarding to money, as well as when someone gets married, what are some questions they can have, between their husband to make sure they're aware of all these different things in case things do happen, such as death.
Yeah, I think it's let's talk about, start a conversation. You make a nice meal at home because it's a private conversation. Or somewhere you can go that's private and say, I want to talk about our future and what our finances are going to look like from our mind, from your mind, and let's like merge those. So for example, I think it's important to know someone's debt situation, someone's credit situation as well, if there's anything you need to know. Um, if they have any assets and things like that. I think it's really important in this day and age to not be secretive, to be quite transparent, and then talk about what you want for the future and things that we can put in place. So if life happens, should we both get a life insurance policy, maybe to ensure if anything happens, the house is paid off, or you don't have to work and things like that, and maybe you can continue to raise the family. If you've had assets before, we need to talk about, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep it in your name? Do you want to, in UK culture, there's like a deed of trust when it comes to houses. Do you want to do that? And just have an open conversation. And one of the things I say is have that conversation when you're happy. Have it, and then draw something up together that you sign. Don't know if there needs to be witnesses. Obviously, that's maybe when you want to look into speaking to someone legally, but some people say it's not necessary. I never feel like I'll be in that place. And I say I hear it, but never say never.
Yeah.
And you want to do things from a happy place, not from a place of resentment. And it can happen to anyone. People can say in the beginning, yeah, it's cool, yeah, we'll go 50-50. But then if there's nothing on paper, where do you go from there? I want to say that because my dad was a lawyer. He's passed away, and my dad's dad was a lawyer, so I'm very big on, what do we have. My sister's a doctor, and like when we used to borrow like money from her, she would literally write up like a mini contract. I never did that because I was like, you're weird, I'm your sister. But it makes me think about the importance of documentation and not waiting till it gets to a bitter point for you to sort out things, because I don't think you can think as clearly that way.
No, I think that's one of the great advice I've heard in regards to, women just being aware of what the financial situation may be in a relationship. And it's important because just like you said, there's a difference from you just having a conversation, say we're gonna do this and that, but it's different ways on paper. So if things do go south, or things, one of death does happen, the paper is there to still bring things to fruition. And I think that's very important. And I want to kind of go into real quick about how important is it to have a healthy money mindset to achieving, financial goals. I feel like that's the very important thing. And how do you encourage women to I guess, have that money mindset?
Yeah. It's not just women I
Um,
encourage, but it's majority them. Um, First of all, just to talk about the importance of a healthy money mindset, it's really key that how you speak to yourself about everything is important. How you see yourself is so vital, in the sense of how you're speaking about your money situation. Is key that it never feels final. That's why I say I encourage people, don't say things like I'm broke and stuff. Say things like, cash flow's not great at the moment. Why? Because it lets people, including yourself, know I'm going to be back up soon. I'm good. And the conversations you have with yourself and the things that you tell yourself about yourself are very important. I am loving this new wave of women who are content creators, who are like, oh my gosh, I'm beautiful, or I'm this. And some people may feel like, okay, you're a bit into yourself, but sometimes I'm like, if you hear some of the comments that people get, especially Black women online, whew, trust me, you have to hype yourself up sometimes. But I think it's key to just have a good money mindset. Be careful what you say, even careful of the things that you think. And no, I had to get out of the mindset of being like, but what if? Because I was just like, and so it's fine. That's why you've got an emergency fund and savings, and that's why you have a good family. And I even one time had to say to my friend, what I said, sometimes we need to track back to how far down you think something can go. And she was just like, worst come to worst, I work at McDonald's. And I said, there you go. And she was nowhere near that. But and there's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's, but it was, for her, it was this fear of what if. And I said, sometimes you need to know that it's not as bad as you think. And for that, you just need to talk to yourself in a certain way and understand and make a plan as well. Because there's one thing to have a good money mindset. And I could be like, listen, I'm going to be a millionaire tomorrow, but I know that unless someone drops that money in my account, it's not happening tomorrow. So you also need to be somewhat realistic to make like good goals, and also be careful who you share that with, because not everyone's going to have that mindset, because it took a while for me to get to this point. And along the way, there were some people who, I don't want to say they were naysayers, but they were skeptical. But now I'm here. Now I've bought a property. Now I'm making things work for myself, and people are starting to see things. It's like,
Okay.
okay. But I hear it because people cannot see the things you see coming for yourself. That's why sometimes I keep a conversation between me and God and a few people I can trust.
Hey family, I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. And if you are and you have yet to subscribe to us here on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. And also, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts and you have yet to leave us a 5-star review, please do so. Now back to the episode. Now that you definitely drop a lot of gems there. One thing that I wanted to like add on to, because the cash flow, like that, cash flow is not that great, because I can think of many times where, whether it's jokingly or whether it's someone asking me for money, and the first thing that comes to mind is like, I'm just broke. It's not the right time, and not realizing that saying that over time, you can actually start to believe that, and when you start to believe, you start to act in a certain way where you limit yourself from certain opportunities, certain opportunities, certain investments. So I thank you for saying that. I want to kind of dive into what are some practical ways that people can, like, I guess, continue to have that mindset, because you go through life, things go up and down. Like you said, you can say that you want to become a millionaire, you want to get your finance together, but you have to have your goal that align with that mindset. So what are some ways that people can create practical goals?
First of all, you want to look at your priorities in life. So you want to look at what's important to you at the stage you're at, because the stage you're at and the stage I'm at could be two different places. The stage I'm at versus someone who has maybe just started their 20s could be different. They may want to focus on career and climb up the ladder. Whereas me, I'm like, do you know what? I'd like to start a family in the next in the next X amount of time. So I'm willing to push back on certain things. And look at what you prioritize. I always say faith is obviously always up there, but so I'm not going to mention that first. But it could be fitness, it could be finances, it could be career, it could be family, relationships, platonic and romantic. You need to just put a list down and say, where is everything coming right now? What's important? And then obviously write them down. It's really, really important that you're writing things down, and you think about that, and create a plan of action. And then, do you know what? Look at that plan every now and again and make adjustments, because life is going to happen, and life can throw mad spanners in the work. There's been so many times where it's like, oh man, I thought I was going to do that. And I remember, like, I think it was 2017 or 2018, that my dad died. And I was like, whoa. And it was when I was originally saving for a house, but then I had to focus on being part of helping the finances towards that. And I was like, right, that's a setback. And it's also an emotional setback. Then you're in a space where, maybe the fitness that I said I was doing, I'm not eating as well anymore. And then sometimes it can just be a bit like a rolling down the hill, right?
Yeah.
And you have to get to a point where you catch yourself and you get back up, but you don't always know when that point is. So I want to say that it's important that we review our goals, and sometimes before we put a full stop on something because we feel it's not happening anymore, I say put a comma on it. There are certain things I'll put a comma on because it may look like I'm not doing it anymore, but maybe it's just a very long pause because I needed it and I needed to reprioritize and focus. So yeah, in 3 steps: 1, prioritize; 2, write things down. 3, make a plan of action. And 4, review according to what is currently going on in your life.
Now, that's definitely great advice, and I'm sorry for your loss for your father.
Thank you.
And being that said, I want to ask, how did your faith, because you mentioned faith a couple times, how did your faith in God, help you through that time, going through the trial of losing your father and wanting to get a house, and still want to become a financial advisor? How did your faith help you in that process?
I think it gave me peace. You know that, as it says in the Bible, peace that surpasses all understanding. I needed that because I didn't, when you lose someone, the world keeps moving and it's weird. No one outside knows.
Yeah,
So everyone's still walking and you want to be like, why are you walking so far? Like, do you know what I mean? But
yeah.
they're not grieving the same things you're grieving. And it's hard to accept that. So I just had to pray to God for peace. I also had to know when to rest. Because one of my friends came around and she said, boy, girl, I know you. She was like, I know you. You'll be out tomorrow doing something productive. Da, 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 da. But she was like, it's cool to take a moment to feel. I was like, okay. So I took time, and I don't always know what that looks like. And I want to say it's weird in a way. Sometimes it's a sadness that never really leaves you. It doesn't mean you feel it every day, but it's a sadness that never really leaves you, in my opinion. But I always pray to God for peace because there isn't much else people can do. They can be around you and they can be supportive and they can love you, but the peace that God gives you is not for sale. It can only come through him.
No, you're 100% right, and I can kind of relate to that. 'Cause I lost my grandma in 2018.
Sorry to hear
And
that.
just the same thing. It's the same experience. You think life will slow down. You think everything was just gonna stay calm, but life does still go on. So for those who are listening, you just gotta find peace in God. Just like you said, I think that's helped me. Finding peace because you still will have the memory. You still will go through the flashback, wishing that they were there. But when you have that peace of God, it keeps you moving. It keeps you hopeful that one day you reunite with them. So that's what keeps me going. And
Mm.
being that said, I want to ask, what are some lessons you have learned, through your journey as a money coach, um, that stands out to you personally?
So this is a bit of an odd one to start on, but don't do all the work yourself, right? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I read that years ago. I'm so glad I read all of those books when I was younger, because now I'm telling you, I don't need to read them books now. Like it's just a lot of it is naturally who I am and who I've become. Um, that book taught me that that's the word, interdependence is so much higher than independence. Um, I have learned to build what I'm trying to build. I cannot do it alone. I have a manager, I have a personal assistant, I have a video editor. I do not want to do these things. I don't want to do everything by myself. It is lonely, it is boring. Excuse me. You lose so much of your personal life to it. I gave up a lot of my 20s to build a career and be at the place I'm at now. And I don't want to say I'm playing catch up, but I missed out on a lot of things just for the sake of it. And now I get the option. I don't have to do that anymore. And I'll never regret the order I did that in, because I see some people who are doing it the other way around. They've got all of the love and that's cool and the social life, but now they're trying to chase career. If I wanted to tomorrow, I could have a kid and get married and say, I want to look after the kid. I've got the means to do that. I've set up things in place to do that. Um, so that's another thing that I say to women. If there's any woman listening, nothing wrong in your 20s, in your early 20s, putting your energy into something, deciding what that thing is. If it's that you it wants to be in your career, cool. But another lesson I'd say is get into investing early, whatever it is. Investing in yourself, investing through index funds, exchange funds. There's so many things, investing in property, whatever it is, get into it, because life doesn't get easier, in my opinion. You just find new and interesting ways to deal with what life gives you. And I am so grateful of how much I gave. Let me start that again. I am so grateful to all the energy I gave towards setting my life up as it is now. I would not take it back in a million years, because of the comfort and peace I have in knowing that at this point in my life, if I want to slow down, I can for a while, to focus on raising other human beings and building a community like within my own family. So yeah, that's key.
That's impressive. That's really good. Because like you said, it's usually the opposite you see a lot of people do, where they chase the party, chase the social life. Um, but I want to ask, because you mentioned something that now you have the opportunity to do what you want to do, but you miss a lot of opportunity while you're in 20. And I want to ask, were you being in 20s, were you trying to create a balance, whether it's like, because I know like oftentimes your friend may invite you to a party, whether it's a birthday celebration, your mom, your cousins, like how did you manage those relationships, as well as, trying to pursue your, but just position yourself in the most financial free way as possible? Like how did you manage those relationships?
I I would always try to communicate if I couldn't make it. Um, it felt horrible sometimes, but I was just like, it is what it is. There are times it's like, I'm actually working. It's Friday, everyone's getting ready, and I'm actually working. Um, and I would just be like, I'm so sorry. I hope to catch you another time. But the thing is, I just didn't have the time. I remember all the time, I think about things that I just thought were not that. I would always prioritize like friends and family and loved ones accordingly. But there may be times I'd be like, we're not that close. I could miss it. But I tried to make it up to them in another way, as long as I knew that I cared about them. But yeah, I just apologized and communicated. And when I could be there, I'd be there. Um, but I think people need to know your heart, and a lot of people knew my heart. I think for a while it just looked like I was just, oh, so motivated for like money, and I just say no. Like I never get into the whole like falling in love with money. I love the freedom. I
Yeah.
love the money as a tool, because if tomorrow they all said, I don't know, the new exchange for money is exercise, I'm doing 20,000 steps a day, because because if it means that I can, go for lunch with my friend and do things and buy a present for my niece, I'm gonna do what I need to. But it's just, understanding that it's a tool. And I think a lot of people can now see, do you know what? Her heart, her heart is in the right place. She just wanted to make sure she was good. And yeah,
Great. And I want to add, being that you have mentored a lot of people and you interact with a lot of people, both men and women, what would you say are some mistakes that you see a lot of people make when it comes to managing finance? And how can people who listen and avoid those same mistakes?
first thing I'd say is get a credit card only when you have the financial discipline to understand how it works. Number two, get into investing earlier and do your research. If you have time to watch all of these shows in the world, you have time to do a little bit of research every now and again to understand something. Um, the earlier you get into investing for yourself, the better. You don't need to be the best at it. You don't need to invest in individual stocks. There are funds that you can do research on and say, all right, I'm going to put this amount of money into it every month, and just go about your business and just watch it hopefully grow over the years, because investing is definitely a long-term game. I would say to people, try not to focus so much on instant gratification. That is key. We're living in a world where you can just log on to any social media app and something is being advertised, even if it's good. It
Yeah.
could be a service, because sometimes people like to put this thing on, drip and stuff like that. But I'm like, don't get it twisted. There are also people who are business crazy, who every app they see, they must get a subscription and do. So I'm like, listen, don't just be out here talking bad about the drip kids. There's drip adults, but they're just spending it on business things that actually potentially make no sense. But yeah, just watch your like love for instant gratification. It's good to delay it from time to time. And four, build up, I don't want to say your streams of income. I think it's good to have more than one stream of income for everybody. Not saying everybody needs to have like 5 or 6, but I think it is key to have at least more than one stream of income in case anything happens. And I want to say people need to think long term. How is life going to work for you? What do you want your life to look like? Even if it's just you pondering, you really need to think about that. How are you setting up your life? What's that going to look like? Because sometimes I'm not even aware that I'm living different until I'll speak to my sister or something, who's like 6 years older than me. And she's like, well, you live different anyway. And I'm like, excuse me. But one thing that she knows she can never say is she knows I've worked hard for this. She's seen it because
Yeah,
she was the one closest to me in age. So she's seen it. But choose how you live your life.
that's right. And I want to ask, 'cause you said, the point for people to get the credit card first and have discipline to get a credit card. Why did you say that should be the
Some people think credit cards are free money.
yeah,
They can, and they can feel like, oh, what? They've given this to me? Cool, more full dome. I'm going to pay back minimum interest. I'm going to pay back the minimum amount every month, but they're not thinking about interest. They're not thinking about APR, which is annual percentage rate, and what that costs. And then it's only as should I say, your financial intelligence grows that you're like, man, this is expensive. And then when, I don't know, you want your credit score to go up or you want to get something else out, you start thinking, oh man, this credit card thing is weighing over me and it's costing me so much. You need to have discipline and know what you're using the credit for. I always say, don't let these things use you. Make sure you're using it wisely. Make good decisions.
that's great. Yeah, 100% right. Only those things use you. And another thing I want to add, based on what you last said, is in regards to investing. What are some resources that people can tap into, to learn more about investing?
Oh, that's always a tough one. It sounds crazy, but I feel like it's the school of learning there, but it's literally YouTube. I would say just go there, do a bit of research, just literally use Google and just start there. Obviously, Yahoo Finance is good. I love reading the Financial Times. But yeah, just go there and just read from time to time. Excuse me. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask people. I have friends who studied economics who are brilliant, and I love asking them questions and things like that. I'm never afraid to look silly just because I don't know something. So I'd say that people should lock into that as well, asking questions and talking about it amongst their community. That's the key as well. Some people are very tight-lipped about their financial situation, and it doesn't help anyone because it means that you don't grow. That's why I do a lot of work on YouTube, and I'm always open and honest. It's funny because all these social media apps are different, right?
Yeah.
So you write something on Twitter and then people will say, you're not even giving us the tools to find out how to do these things. I'm like, baby, I put out 2 videos a week helping you all. Like, I am transparent, and it gets taken for granted. So but the good work is out there if you look for it and if you focus on it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think what you call, just the transparency of money. I think it kind of go back to what you said earlier in terms of how you may have some naysayers, so you don't want them to know too much about
Yeah.
your business and your finance, and just people that just want to take from you. So I think that could be a reason why some people are so quiet and they don't necessarily want to ask for help. 'Cause I can relate to that at times where I may not want to ask for help. I just know it's like it's a trade-off. Like if they're not winning something off me, they're not gonna help me, or vice versa. Um, but I want to ask a question because we know in this current economy, there's a lot of different things that's going on, whether it's interest rates, whether it's crypto, whether so many different things. I want to ask, what would you say are the most important topics, financial topics that people should pay attention to, or learn more about, that can change their future financially?
Number one, understand what a recession means for the everyday person, because some people are like, oh, I don't care. And I always said, a lot of people, you don't, even when my friends who studied economics or finance or anything related, when the pandemic happened, we said, you think these days are free? This furlough, all of these things, they're not free. We're gonna pay for it later. We're all paying for it now. We're paying for it globally. Everybody needs to know how a recession works. Everybody needs to know. No one, even the wise investor, knows how a recession works. And if they've got money, they're rubbing their hands like Birdman. Everybody needs to know how this thing works, that they call a recession. I would say people need to understand how investing works and how to make it work for them. And I would literally say those are the two things. And also, people need to understand themselves. They need to understand their habits and why they do certain things, and just be having honest conversations with themselves. I'm trying to have more honest conversations with myself and my finances and be like, okay, so what's your game plan? Because you're enjoying yourself this year because you bought a property last year, but how are we doing this? How are we making the most of this situation? I'm currently in a position where I'm enjoying spending more, but soon I'm going to be like, girl, you're going to have to rein that in. you got other dreams. So yeah.
I definitely agree with those 2 points. Which leading to ask, would you say there's anything specifically for those who may be in the UK that they should focus more on, specifically in the UK, London area?
No, I would say just the two things I said about knowing how a recession works for the everyday person, and knowing how investing works and like knowing yourself. But no, I wouldn't say there's anything in particular, because just also, as my parents said growing up, keep up to date with the news. Keep up to date with the news. Know what's happening, and ask why. Ask why is this happening? You need to understand that, because yeah, I don't these days, I don't like surprises. So boy, I stay switching on the BBC, Sky News. I'm switching on all of them because I need to. God, I'm like, what is this? What does this mean? Sometimes the thing is, I'll be chilling, and then they'll be like, this prime minister stepped down. I'm like, oh. So stay alert with the news.
No, that's really great. And I want to ask, because often, I don't know, you mentioned that the reason why you got into this financial world is because of your best friend not knowing too much about money. But I want to ask, has there been any money challenges where you learn, like, I don't know, you getting out of debt, any challenges you getting a property, or any
Yeah,
challenge,
I've
anything you can
yeah,
share?
yeah. So I've had challenges with debt before where I haven't known how to leverage it and make it work for me. There was a time where after uni I didn't move back home. I kind of lived with my sister. Then my sister went to another country, and I stayed, and I didn't really understand how bills work, what I could do, what I could afford. And I'd never used an overdraft in like uni, for example. So that's when I started using it. For me, that's when I was like, you really need to know how to make the system work for you. And if you're using it, just be aware of why you're using it and how it's working for you, and don't let it use you long term, even if you need it short term. That's key. So I've definitely had challenges around understanding even debt and credit. I remember the first credit card I got out was simply because it was the same provider as my bank account. And I was like, oh, whereas now I'm like, what? I need my perks. I need all my perks on my credit card. But obviously that's just growth and experiences.
That's good. And just with the going off of growth, I'm sure there's someone who's listening to it. They probably listen to a bunch of different interviews, a bunch of different experts, but they still hesitant on taking control to their finance. They want to live this soft life. They want to like get lit now. So what would you say to that person to put some type of fire in their heart for them to realize that they need to get started as soon as possible?
Okay. So the cute thing to say is balance is key. So cool. If you want to get lit, you want soft life, go ahead. But balance is key. Can you not do 60% soft life, 40%, and then just change the percentages a bit? Does it have to be 100? No, it doesn't. The hard thing to say is, do you want to wave to your neighbors who are retired while you're still working after 65?
Mm.
the choice is up to you, because the thing is, the things that we're seeing now, it doesn't necessarily manifest straight away. It manifests slowly over time. It manifests in the choices you can afford to make for your kids, as a result of how you've chosen to live. It manifests in your retirement age. It manifests in your retirement options. And I just say that's what it's about, because you can tell we're all going to continue to grow up, and you say, oh yeah, so and so, say, wow, they're 70 and they're still working. Is that what you want for your life? If you can choose not to make that, I get sometimes life falls on people in ways they didn't expect. So
Yeah.
I'm not as if to say like I'm knocking people as if because anything can happen. I don't look down on no one, but I'm saying if you can put things in place to ensure you are in the best place possible for you and your loved ones, start doing so little by little now, because boy, time catches up with you.
That's great. And I want to kind of dive in real quick into your book, and why you wrote the book, How to Save It. What inspired you to write the book?
It was funny because I wanted a book deal, and then a book deal came to me. And I remember before, like, my book agent was like, yeah, like, a book deal is coming, but she doesn't know it. And I was like, what are you talking about? what are you talking about? We have no book deals right now. Like, girl, you're playing. I was getting annoyed because I was thinking, like, you're just talking about some deal, like this is Disney. How is this gonna happen? And then one day I got an email. That for me was God ordained as well, because there's a whole backstory. But basically I started seeing penguins everywhere, and it was Penguin and Murky Books who approached me. So that felt very God ordained. I wanted to write this book, and the book is quite small. It's a pocket rocket book, but the reason I like it is because I don't like to scare people when it comes to money. If since money is something so many of us haven't been taught, I never wanted to be like, this is the book you need to understand everything. Like, I've read The Intelligent Investor, right? So I know that book is crazy. I've never I've never read a book as big as The Intelligent Investor. But what it taught me was, I don't want to scare people. I want people to feel like this is inviting. I've learned a couple of things. So I touch on mindset, how you grew up, your understanding of money, the things you do that may be associated with like your parents and your upbringing. I talk obviously then about budgeting, investing in yourself. Towards the end, I talk about wellness as well. That, listen, if you're making this money, you need to enjoy it too. So yeah.
That's really good. Where would you say, what can people expect from you in the near 5 to 10 years? And what are some of the goals you have for yourself as
I
far as
love when people ask that question. More books, plural. Um, a podcast, maybe. A podcast. Family. That to me is like high and so important. Buying more properties, teaching on a wider scale, growing. I always say if money was no object, I would still do what I do. So I'm excited to grow in different facets, and those are, yeah, some of the things. More assets, more teaching. I always say together we are richer, and I really believe that. So anywhere you see me growing, you'll see other people growing too.
And how can people stay in touch with you? Where can people find you?
Instagram and YouTube, Bola Sol. Yeah, just type in BOLASOL. You will find me on Instagram. I'm on YouTube twice a week. And yeah, I'm on Twitter, I'm on TikTok, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm doing what I need to do on these platforms. And yeah, that's where people can keep up with me. I think some people are sometimes surprised when I respond to DMs, but I like a clean inbox, so I make sure that if unless it's rubbish, I'm like, man, get rid of this. But more time, I really love connecting with people, and I love hearing about people's financial journeys and stories and answering questions. So yeah, hit me up on Instagram. I do Finance Fridays, and on YouTube, I upload twice a week.
That's great. And thank you very much, Ms. Bola Sol. And for those who are listening, I hope you guys don't see as another entrepreneur, another guest on the Wealth and Christ shows. But I hope this inspires you, and I hope that it inspires you to go and do something great this week. And stay tuned for the next week episode. Thank you again, Ms. Bola Sol.